This screenshot right here is one of the first few opening seconds of this game, showing authentic footage of an execution in Nanjing, China, recorded in 1937. The question I want to ask, apart from why it says Indochina instead of Nanjing, is what purpose does footage of two men being executed serve for the game? Whether you find this inclusion tasteless or not, this ultimately grounds World at War in the theme it aims for, mixing real-life occurrences with fiction in an interactive medium. World at War is an uncomforting and sometimes depressing game. Treyarch brandishes their unapologetic approach to storytelling that conveys multiple emotions. WoW, on the surface level, appears to be another one of those goddamn anti-Christian brain-melting video games. But underneath that mask of video game tropes lies something more sinister, grounded in reality. Its campaign to multiplayer, and the only reason we buy CoD nowadays, deceptively appear normal, right until you dig in a little more, peeling back the curtain where I'm hiding, with the answers to your questions. And no, Dad is not coming home. World at War is a horror game through and through. It built itself off the real war atrocities and entertains the idea of America's triangle eye persona, even going as far as to make an entire story off of a secret Nazi weapon conspiracy theory. Without World War II, there is no zombies mode, there is no Tom Hanks, and there is no Oppenheimer. Call of Duty World at War. Your granddad experienced the war, so you don't have to. The moment you boot up World at War, bam! Film reel of archived war footage flashes by, linking the connections between fiction and reality to the player. Then we see the main menu. It's unconventional. Other games will present you themselves with a bombastic flair, backed by some awesome music to prepare you for an epic match of spawning and then dying over and over.
I spawned and I ran into a syntax which stuck to me.
World at War has restraint, sequencing multiple empty theaters of battle, occupied by fearful sounds. The choir of the defeated echoes on. And so, the stage is set. The game begins with the best intro to any Call of Duty game. It's a timeline of how the Americans got involved with the Second World War. Apart from heinous war crimes, the Japanese were making serious money moves, expanding land and taking over railroads in French-occupied Indochina, which the United States grew reasonably jealous of. So the Big D didn't want to share any of his toys anymore. They took back Tom Hanks and installed an embargo to prevent Japan from borrowing Daniel Plainview's oil. So Japan responded with meow. Meow. What the hell? America love war now. As we know already, the intro showcases real footage from the war. Back then, it's possible to believe that small niche studio Treyarch got it approved. But now, Xi Jinping is our Fortnite duo.
Make an atoll. Little more than sand, trees, and a small Japanese military base. Miller's reconnaissance team landed there almost a week ago. Since then, we've heard nothing. For all we know, they're already dead. If what little we know about the Japanese is true, it might be better if they are.
Might be? You're undershooting the potentials there, mate. The Japanese were so draconian to POWs, this would stem from the average Japanese soldier being brainwashed into the idea that surrender was dishonorable. So this means that if you surrendered to be a prisoner to the Japanese, you were tortured, made to work, and sometimes were an experiment in one of the plethora of prison camps. It's a treatment worse than death, because at least when you're dead, you don't feel anything, unless spectate mode is biblically accurate. Japan had only left the age of the samurai around 70 years prior, yet the ideologies of the Bushido, a samurai's honor code, lived on. An oath which contains a variety of stipulations, one of which were that if you did something shameful, one way to redeem yourself was to do seppuku, an act where you slice your stomach, where afterwards your Fortnite duo cuts your head off. Then his Fortnite duo had to cut his head off, because it was disrespectful for him to cut your head off too clean that it rolled on the floor. And yes, my fellow viewers, this is an excuse to slide in more Japanese weebery to the channel. You can never escape me.
The harakiri is a very positive, very proud way of death. I think it is very different from the Western concept of suicide. Western concept of suicide is always defeat itself, but harakiri sometimes makes you win.
Yet, sadly, this outdated sentiment still carries on today. Japan's high rates of suicide can be linked to that idea of shame, manifesting from its different sources, a big one being shame targeting. In some cases, people are shamed for not getting into a good university or fail to meet social expectations, becoming outcasted. Back to Call of Duty, you're a prisoner.
You think because you say nothing, you are strong?
To him, you are less than nothing for surrendering, but he figured he could do with a new ashtray.
貴様は強くない。
After then, we are rescued by the walk and stud of patriotism. Given our freedom gun, we are then free to roam. This game excels at placing you in unwelcoming environments, as if you're an alien, unadaptable to your surroundings. After all, the whole game is in foreign land. The Americans fight in Japanese-occupied territory, and the Russians rush to Site B in German mainland. The environments always work against you, fighting literal uphill battles against endless hordes of enemies towering over you. It places you in the vulnerable shoes of a soldier. You are one of many, yet expendable. In their land, their blood, the environment is dirty because in the 40s, there is actually a lot of farmland untouched by this new technology called cobblestone. Russians annexing German land isn't particularly clean. As a result, everything is disorganized, the textures are rough around the edges, and are haphazardly destructive. It feels like the environment wasn't carefully made. It's the Midas's touch of chaoticism. Contrary to later Call of Duty games, becoming this weirdly confused web of themes, which aim from our sterile yet vibrant worlds in supposedly depressing circumstances, it encompasses this Michael Baileyan approach to its narrative, full of less than subtle writing.
Do you speak Japanese?
Well, I am 1 week into Duolingo, and I can say good morning. Is that good enough? I don't even know what this game wants to be. On one half, it can be spooky with its music and environmental storytelling, and on the other, it wants to be epic. Men in suits with t-shirts love that word, epic.
World War II is known for huge epic battles on big battlefields. Epic battles.
Call of Duty Advanced Writing, Prepare to Cry Edition. Copy that. Vanguard is afraid to discomfort the player, pulling punches and cushioning the horrors of war behind a trendy personality that is 80 years ahead of itself.
I'm too old for this shit!
Keep yourself bandaged up. I don't want you bleeding out and missing all the fun.
Hang on back there!
I see a ton of shit outside that goes boom.
Train go boom.
Even visually, the game looks too clean and vibrant. Maybe it's one of the rare downsides of improvements in graphics. Perhaps World at War's dated oatmeal-looking graphics play to its advantage. An incomprehensible mess of rubble, blood, and dirt that tries to imitate realism. Americans will plow through the Japanese forces like a wave of fire, leaving behind a charred, flattened land populated by bodies and the hollow shells of tanks. In Vanguard, we have our special pretty boys. In World at War, we have our dirty, old, and disheveled Russian who tries to appear human. In Blowtorch and Corkscrew, the aesthetics of this level is muddy. Literally. The weapons here have been specially textured to be wet and dirty to accommodate this mountainous terrain showered in rain. It's tired and sloppy, like a pyrocynical video. It reflects your fellow men who are desperately grasping onto the strength to continue watching, but they just can't. I don't know if you know anything about war media, but they love mud. A lot. That's a lot of mud. Oh, it's not supposed to go in there. Another thing which reinforces that sense of horror is that cutscenes and pivotal moments occur in diegetic gameplay. Like how Half-Life's story doesn't pause the controls. Holy fuck, where's the skip button? World at War narrates everything to you while you play. It does, but it rarely takes the controls away. Half-Life did it one time, so legally World at War can still do it. Call of Duty Vanguard, on the other hand, is the world's most expensive movie. The faces look pretty, I guess. The lighting is pretty cool. War is unapologetic. In the Vendetta mission, you start on a pile of bird food who were previously your friends. The coloring here is so grey that the very first thing that you're drawn to is the blood which has been spilled, a discernible shade of red amongst the drab scene of death. And for the rest of the level, it continues like this, a hopeless shade of defeat in the city of Stalingrad. World at War's colors are generally flat. They stick to one hue, which dictates the mood of a level. Succeeding Call of Duty games have so much more to show, with so much less to convey. Like, give me an emotive color scheme. CoD 4's All Gillied Up was grey, which pretty much represented desolation. Modern Warfare 2, it took the sandy desert storm aesthetic and brought it to America. So instead of wasting your time going to war, we brought it here. Oh, and also in Black Ops 3, I don't remember much from Black Ops 3. Train Go Boom, I guess? This is war. It's distressingly depressing. So for future reference, unless it's parody, let's keep the Malians outside of the cinematic universe, okay, Sledgehammer? By now, you all know about the Raygun Easter egg. The designer who made this Easter egg didn't tell anyone about it, and when word got out, he nearly got fired, so good job, guys. You stand in some craters, wait for statues to emerge, and you get gunned. But when activating the EE, a contorted voice is heard. Usually, people write it off as eldritch wizard jargon, but YouTuber Russell used a real-life cheat code, which is getting a friend to slow it down, reverse, and translate it for you. This distress obviously referring to the Americans infinitely spawning from the ocean. At first, I thought the statues carrying the ray gun were Koma Inu, or lion dogs, guardians of the deities of shrines. But they're actually an Okinawan Shisa. They're like the Koma Inu, but mom has one at home. Fundamentally, they're the same. They are both borrowed from China, like the language. Typically, one will have a mouth open for offerings, and the other will have a mouth closed to stop corruption from taking over, which, you know, just makes the stone the biggest cause of friendly fire in history. In real-life instances, both the Shisa and the Koma Inu can be seen to be offering coins from their mouth, which like here, they're offering 10,000 points worth of mystery box attempts. I mean, sometimes they could even be sea-balling. Look at this photo I took when I was there. Now, the fact that this is an Easter egg made by a rogue employee we should completely corporately blacklist, it's likely this has no greater meaning other than being a bit of fun. But this is my schizophrenia session. I'll imagine what I want. I'd like to imagine this was the Japanese last line of defense, as the Koma Inus or the Shisas represent guarding and sometimes offer something. They're on the beach facing the direction of the Americans come from, and they offer an overpowered weapon. There's also that line that plays as they emerge that says, "This is the last line of defense. The war is near its end, and the Japanese are at their limit. Land and resources are dwindling, they're desperate, and they accidentally gave the God Hand to God's land." You can actually see them in the late game when you're actually in Okinawa, placed around, typically guarding entrances to shrines or temples. In the mission Hard Landing, you are tasked to take down the Japanese anti-air defense, and in the beginning, we can see an allied plane presumably shot down and crash landed. Your men get a closer look in hopes of live comrades, when suddenly, they hit the boogie bomb! They put traps in my boobs. Now, this is a thing the Japanese did not only to dead American soldiers, but amongst their own dead too. And it doesn't even stop there. The Japanese tactics of playing unfair had a profound psychological effect on the American soldier and is ultimately described in the book Darwin and International Relations on the Evolutionary Origins of War and Ethnic Conflict. Okay, world's shortest YouTube title. If we flip through the pages to here, you can find the lines.
You get into a nasty frame of mind in combat. You see what's been done to you. You'd find a dead Marine that the Japs had booby-trapped. We found dead Japs that were booby-trapped. And they mutilated the dead. Began to get down to bare level. We learned about savagery from the Japanese, but those 16 to 19-year-old kids we had in the canal were fast learners.
Okay, now this is the section where the essay YouTuber does an analysis on death and why it's bad.
I'm going to die!
Deaths in video games by themselves aren't scary. Most players are desensitized to fictional death. However, it does depend on the genre, how it's portrayed and what connections the audience may have to characters. For example, Until Dawn, deaths in that game are tense because the whole time you're trying to prevent the characters from being killed. All that anticipation and effort makes the kill shot shocking when they eventually become Wendigo food. And they can be fairly gruesome too. Red Dead Redemption 2 is practically Cowboy Sopranos. When you see one fella go, you begin to worry for the others. Fate is definite, and the gang slowly turns inside out by their own hands.
But lately I'm getting the feeling that I came in at the end. The best is over.
Remember Pearl Harbor?
Now let's look at Mortal Kombat, a game no one plays but watches the fatality compilations every time a new game releases. These breaches of war crimes are a spectacle. With every new release, people want to see more and new creative ways this game's characters are mutilated because we're all so numb inside and want to feel something. Then they go back to playing a better game like Melty Blood.
China.
But when you're in a theater of war, seeing the struggle of someone becoming a hot summer's barbecue with a Corona and lime is a lot more horrifying to see than someone ragdolling after being no-scoped, screaming as their skin is peeling as they thrash around in desperation, attempting to snuff the flames. There's an entire mission dedicated to this atrocity, subtly called Burn 'em Out. Men will be mutilated and have dismembered parts, screaming in pain, sometimes attempting to crawl away from you. Some even hung by Russians as a stark warning to those who oppose the Red Army, undressing them of their dignity, only leaving a warning with a sign pinned to them that says, "Traitors to the motherland." Making the player uncomfortable is achieved effectively depending on how you portray death. Battlefield 1 begins with intro text to set the scene. You are in a war to end all wars. What follows is frontline combat. You are not expected to survive.
We're surrounded!
You are thrown in, fighting the enemy in what pathetic cover remains. You are demanded to stand your ground, to fight back. This is a test of endurance, and is ultimately futile. No matter how skilled you are with the gun, you will soon run out of ammo, places to hide, fellow comrades. The enemy waves appear endless, but you still fight on, with the hope that the game will go quiet and say, the fight is won. But you aren't rewarded with that positive sense of accomplishment. Instead, you are to bacon defeat in front of a birth to death date, before being shifted haphazardly to the next playable cannon fodder, soon to be killed. In this, emotions clash together. It's presented that these men all have lives, names, having roles to serve in their life. However, when put amongst many other men, neither are in the spotlight for their efforts. You were not expected to survive, and this war ended nothing. World at War, even at one point, tricks you. In the mission Black Cats, you are tasked with a night raid to sink Japanese merchant ships to disrupt the flow of resources. In history, these merchant ships would oftentimes carry ammo, weapons, and did I mention prisoners of war? These same merchant ships often would be gunned down by allied submarines or planes, killing or injuring those POWs. Oh, and did I mention that the allies didn't even know? What's even worse is that at the start of the mission, you are told this.
Unmarked Japanese merchant fleet. Designation unknown.
They're probably resupplying the enemy on Okinawa.
Legitimate targets?
Affirmative, they're part of the enemy war machine. Permission to engage, over and out.
Roger that.
Given the good to go, you potentially attack Japanese ships that contain American POWs, or you could just, shoot your own fucking wingmates.
Just shoot your guy.
Listen, my gamer brain. This game accurately places you in a situation where you might kill allies without giving you the knowledge of it. Right until you did your homework for a YouTube video and realized, oh fuck. At least the music goes hard. Speaking of music, let's discuss sounds. I love the soundtrack. It has its rock and gritty themes for battle, but in quiet times it's moody. It has screeches of violins, almost horror-like in its build-ups. In the bird feed aisle at the pet shop, you awaken to a harmonic cry over your heartbeat as your vision focuses in, as if you're at an end, watching your comrades die. When your safety comes to be realized, the sound disappears. Let's not forget the sound design. One of my favorite examples is on Ring of Steel. Midway through this level, you enter an asylum, which is Verrucht before Epic. The choice of audio is homogeneous with the visuals. When entering this place, the battlefield becomes quiet. It's almost like the game has let go of your hand and almost wants you to look around to investigate the atrocities the Germans have done here. The evidence is found in spades. If you listen carefully over the sounds of explosions, this atmosphere is set by sounds of scraping metal, like a medical tool is being brandished. There's either faint sounds of rats scuttering in the corners or otherwise whispers of the dead. This small but detailed setup harbors the essence of these desolate emotions and, well, I love it.
But only the insane would stand against us. Keep moving! Keep killing!
Reznov in the entirety of World at War is a menacing character, a man of brutal means to make ends meet, a man who basks in the victories but is humble about his losses. In battle, he's starkly contrasted by the other character, Chernov, who Reznov constantly berates.
Which do you think will lead us home? Writing about this war or fighting it?
Germany in the blood.
No one will ever read this!
Chernov is the opposite of Reznov, having more empathy and recognizes fighting apart from murder.
Chernov! I am not hearing gunshots!
There is no point, Sergeant. They are already bleeding to death.
And you, Dmitri, are a product of one of these characters' influences. Are you inspired by Reznov's unforgiving means of action, following in his footsteps, or Chernov's more compassionate approaches towards surrenders and such? Chernov documents the war through his empathetic lens in his diary. Because you are a participant of this war, your role has a significance. Throughout the game, depending on your behavior towards men who surrender, Chernov keeps notes on who you are. What are you writing about me? Give me that. I know you're talking shit about me in that. When charging the Reichstag at the end of the game, Chernov becomes charcoal, and Reznov finally displays compassion at the end.
Dmitri! Someone should read this.
Insisting that someone read his documentation of the war effort. Despite Reznov's rough and around-the-edge attitude, this shows he loves and cares for all of his brothers. He only wanted to keep morale up, keeping his comrades with him and without abandonment. This worked in the end. Chernov carried the flag up proud to the Reichstag, playing his part until the end. The final level begins with an entry of Chernov's diary, which changes depending on whether you spared surrendering Germans or not.
When he first spoke of Dmitri, Reznov told tales of a hero. Someone we should all aspire to be like. His bravery on the battlefield is beyond question, but he has also shown mercy amidst the brutality of the Red Army. He is indeed a hero. His merciless brutality defines him only as a savage, just like the rest of the Red Army. He is no hero.
When you play a linear action shooter game, you never stop to think how the game may perceive your actions and judge you. You might assume that in a game like an immersive sim, but rarely or never has it been done with a video game like Call of Duty. A game that is essentially a shooting gallery with a fixed path and ending. The last game that I can recall that expanded on this idea was Black Ops 2. In that game, you could unlock different endings depending on how you played. Even inconsequential moments can happen, like even charring Michael Rooker's face, which lasts with him for the rest of the game. Look at his puppy eyes. How cute. Especially in a game like World at War, where the numbers of men are so large, you're meant to feel insignificant, so much so that you're sent to kill other men involuntarily because of the powers that be, perhaps becoming the very evil you seek to end. You are judged on whether you disdain the act of robbing a man's life, or if you revel in the act. When you finally finish the war in the peak of all of its horror, after overcoming all odds, after losing so many, World at War presents a speech from President Truman's plans to end the war in the East, which then overlays one of humanity's biggest atrocities ever inflicted onto itself. The Enola Gay, dropping the little boy on Hiroshima, which then it closes off on the text saying, 60 million lives were lost as a result of World War II. And that is why Call of Duty World at War is actually the horror game, with its conveyance of emotion through bleak colours to being rich in historical context. There's a reason World at War is heralded as the best, and why people still make videos about it to this day. I did have a whole section written out for the multiplayer and zombies mode, but I feel Alex Shakes described it best in empty multiplayer maps are unsettling, and Leon Talksalot did it best with his Verrucht and Darice videos. Honestly, if I said anything here, I would be regurgitating the mashed bird feed of thoughts down your throats, so definitely go watch those videos instead. You already have anyway, so watch it again. Thank you all for watching. I actually have a Twitter, it's at RamskerXD. I got more content to come, so sit back and wait another month or two for that. Hope you all enjoyed. Have a good night.